Hey everybody, here's the week 4 lectures. I'm going to try this week to do it all in one video because the chapters are pretty tightly knit together, so I want to just do it all as one video, chapter 6, 7, and 8. So it might be a little lengthy. Hopefully your computer can load it. If it gets too long, I guess I'll split it up, and hopefully I get through it without anybody knocking on my door and having to start over. But the way I see it, chapter 6, 7, and 8 are all about composing messages. There are 3 major types of messages that they cover. They cover neutral/positive messages, persuasive messages, and bad news messages. And you got a little bit of practice with in dealing with this with your email assignment. You had kind of the bad news, First Merit Bank is taking over, you're getting fired type email, which is bad news or at least scary news. And then you had the neutral message of the hiring of a new employee. So bad news messages obviously are part of business. They're harder to write. Neutral positive messages are pretty easy to take care of, and you guys actually did a pretty good job organizing those. But medium and organization are the 2 most important components to composing messages. How do I organize it, and what is the best format? And those 2 things differ depending on the type of message. So again, the first type of message is neutral messages or positive messages. These should be easy to write because they're either informational or complimentary. And most of the people that you're writing these to either have a good idea what you're going to be talking about, or are people you talk with frequently, or are already on your team and in agreement with you. So they're already interested, invested in what it is you have to say. So for these messages, there's no real beating around the bush necessary. A neutral message or a positive message, you can just use the direct organizational format, and you understand probably what that is through the email assignment. But the direct organizational format is just to state your main claim first. This saves the reader time. They can skim the rest of the message for the justifications, but it gets all the necessary information out first. For instance, I plan on hiring so-and-so, here's why. You don't say, here are all the good things this person did, and then maybe at the end say that you're going to hire them. That would be indirect. So directness is appreciated in neutral and positive messages. Like I said, you're not persuading anybody, you're just delivering information. So the vast majority of neutral and positive messages are organized in the direct organizational format. It's just a great time saver, and it makes people feel a little bit better. As we get further in the lecture, bad news messages use indirect format like the First Merit Citizens Bank email. So neutral and positive messages can be anything from announcements, invitations, requests, congratulations, asking simple questions, delivering simple information. So they're pretty easy to make. And like I said, there's no persuasion necessary. You're basically just delivering a piece of information to your audience. So they're pretty straightforward. They're pretty formal. They can be friendly in tone or whatever, but they're pretty easy to deal with. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of neutral and positive messages in terms of organization. Just get your main point out there first in a short 1 or 2 sentence paragraph, and then justify your information or your decision or whatever it is later on throughout the email, just like you guys did with the hiring email. The other part of positive messages are goodwill messages. There's a short piece in your chapter about this, and I think people underestimate the impact of goodwill messages in business. But goodwill messages are things like recognizing someone's achievements, giving them congratulations, thank you notes, sympathy notes if someone has a death in the family or an illness or something they're dealing with. These are really powerful within your office, your business. Especially if you have employees, they really appreciate getting these. Like I said, positive feedback is the most important part of business, and as far as motivating people and getting them to work hard for you. But this also works well. Goodwill messages work well with customers too. If you are running some sort of firm or business where one of your customers or suppliers or whatever it is has a problem or a death or does something well, it's always great to recognize that with a goodwill message. Goodwill messages tend to be handled in a richer medium than anything else. Like informational things go out in emails or letters or whatever. Goodwill messages usually work best when it's a phone call, face-to-face conversation, handwritten note. These go a lot further because it shows that you took the time to recognize them. It's not like a form letter where you copied and pasted their name in. So just a few rules for goodwill messages. Send it while it's fresh. Someone has a death in the family, don't wait 6 months to say, hey, I heard, Granny died, sorry about that. That is kind of, poor taste. Same with an accomplishment. If someone does something really great, you don't wait, 12 weeks to say, hey, I realize that, back in December you did a great thing for the company. So make sure it's fresh. Be direct and specific. Don't just say, I appreciate the fact that you exist. Say things like, I appreciate that you did fill in the blank. I really appreciate that you went out of your way to help this customer. I really appreciate the effort you put in on this project. Try not to be cheesy or over the top, but be sincere, and people will appreciate that. And they don't need to be overly verbose or overwrought in any way. A thank you note does not need to be 17 pages. A congratulatory note does not need to be 40 paragraphs. It can be very short, sweet, handwritten, one paragraph, few sentences, sign your name, and people will get a better impression. If you try a little bit too hard, people might mistake the intention of the goodwill message that you're trying to send. So, like I said, recognition, congratulations, thank you, sympathies, those things go a really long way. And like I said, those all happen in direct organizational format. So it's pretty easy to divide a partition in your mind. Positive or neutral messages, direct format; bad news messages, indirect format. So you can kind of keep those things in your mind, and the format makes a big deal of in terms of how people actually read what you've written. The format speaks for itself. It's almost nonverbal in a way. The second type of messages are the persuasive messages, and people always freak out about persuasion like it's going to be overly difficult or something, but we've been persuading people since we could start talking. I mean, I've seen 5-year-olds persuade their parents that French fries are the best thing for them to eat for dinner. People get out of being grounded. My students are 14, and they're extremely manipulative in every way you could possibly imagine. So we're good at persuasion. We know how to talk to people, and especially when we know our audience. So knowing your audience, like everything in this class, is probably paramount. But we're better than we think at this whole persuasion business. And in the business world, we have to persuade people to do all sorts of things, from maybe I need you to take my Saturday at work to I want you to buy my product. But the main point is that you're getting someone to buy your product, adopt your view, become motivated, sell something that you want them to sell, do you a favor, give you a recommendation. You could be persuading them to do pretty much anything. And so your persuasion will depend on the task, but there are some ground rules that will stay the same as far as persuasion goes. But like I said, know your audience, know how they're going to receive your message, and those types of things before you go trying to persuade them. The most important part for me as a writing teacher is the rhetoric aspect of persuasion. There's a very, very old tripartite or three-headed model from the Greeks way back 1,000,000 years ago that really explains persuasion in a way that's never been redone or paralleled in the rest of human history. And that's the ethos, logos, or logos, pathos model. And we know that these things are happening. We might not know what to call them, but we see ethos, logos, and pathos in every single thing that we absorb as consumers of information, whether it's a TV commercial or a newspaper ad or an essay. They all are persuasive in some way through image or whatever it might be. So the three parts of the persuasion model: number one is ethos, and that's the credibility aspect. And ethos, kind of in your mind, you can relate with ethics. How credible is the author? How ethical is the author? What are their credentials? So, like, you can believe me when I talk about writing, because I'm a writing teacher, but if I try to teach you about brain surgery, you might want to take my information with a grain of salt. So my ethos shows that I'm credible or believable in my field. Like, all of you are credible in the business field, but maybe if you wanted to teach me how to cook, maybe you're not good at that. So ethos is an appeal to your credibility. Like, hey, I'm really good at this. I'm an expert. You should believe me. So maybe mentioning credentials without going over the top is an ethical approach. Logos, number two, is an appeal to logic, and that's just persuading people through facts, numbers, data, pie charts. Making things make sense to people. And that's probably the most ethical way to persuade. And then the last one is pathos, and that's an appeal based on emotion. And I always tell my students, think of that ASPCA commercial with all the maimed kitties and puppies with broken paws and missing ears and things like that, and Sarah McLachlan's singing in the background to see if you can donate your money to this cause. The pathos really is an application to your feeling as a human being. It makes you feel bad or guilty or scared. ADT commercials to get you to buy an in-home security system, that's an application of your emotion, your fear, your protection of your family. So whether or not it's right or wrong, you can appeal to the sense of people's emotion to get them to buy into a certain idea. And this happens a lot. Sports movies are an ethical appeal, a pathos appeal to emotional appeal. So we see these a lot, and emotional appeals might not be the most credible way of going about persuading someone, but they are the most effective. Our emotion still does drive a lot of what we do biologically. But this three-part model has been around for thousands of years for a reason. And these things are not separate or divided from one another. You can use ethos, logos, and pathos all at the same time, all in the same document or in the same video or in the same marketing scheme. But these are three different things to think about when you're trying to persuade someone to do something for you. But you basically need to decide your target behavior before you get going. What is it that I want this person to do? Why should they do it for me? Use facts, statistics, expert opinion. Show the benefits to that person and say, like, look, if you do this or sell this or buy this or believe this, these are the things that are going to be better in your life or in your business or whatever. Acknowledge the counter argument, like, this other company says this about their product and that it's better than ours, and we acknowledge that, but here's why ours is better. Or, I agree that other people might say this, but you have to basically overcome the counter argument. And in acknowledging a counter argument, you don't want to give it too much strength to make it better than your argument. So there are tons of examples that I could give.